How's it going, guys? John, the basic expert here, and in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit more about something I missed in last week's video when I was talking about this book here. And in this book, in that section that I went over, I kind of gave you guys a brief overview of that section and some of the things that I found interesting about it. And me being space-brained as I am all the time, I totally missed something I wanted to talk about, which is Dave Arneson's, quote, medieval Braunstein games. Now, I don't want to get too much into the controversy around Braunsteins. We've already covered that on this channel in detail. Suffice to say, I think that the term or the name Braunstein is now thoroughly in the ownership of just the hobby as a whole. There's no published game. No one owns the copyright to it, as far as I know. And so these other individuals in the past that we've talked about that try to lay claim to this term, I think they've lost the war as far as the mechanics and what the game is at this point. Like, I don't think they have a leg to stand on in their claims. And the reason why is because Braunstein games are something that were sort of, they were so influential. David Wesley's Braunstein games, and then there was the Braunstein one, which was like a Wild West one. And for those of you that don't know, the first Braunstein was a game that took place like in this Napoleonic era Prussian town, and there was military and non-military characters within it that were handed out to players. They all had their own individual goals and motivations, and through the course of play over the night, the players tried to accomplish those goals, make deals with each other, and then the referee would adjudicate everything. And, you know, this is the progenitor of the role-playing game as we know it in a lot of ways. It contributed greatly to it, but it also is its own thing, all its own. It's very rules light. There's not much in the way of like mechanics per se, from what I can tell and understand. But you know, this kind of game, unless you're like a nerd in the hobby like we are here at this channel and all my friends, or you know, some of these other channels, you don't really know what Braunstein is. I would assume that even people in the 5e sphere, you know, they probably haven't even read this book, so they don't know what that is, right? Maybe they read this and they know what it is. But in it talks about Dave Arneson running a medieval Braunstein in his Blackmore setting in about like 1970-71 or something like that. So this is obviously after David Wesley's Braunsteins. From what I understand, David Wesley's not particularly interested in fantasy stuff, but obviously Arneson was. And so what I think is interesting is how influential the Braunstein concept was to the beginning of Dungeons and Dragons, and thus the whole tabletop role-playing game hobby that we enjoy now, 50 years later, since the release of original Dungeons and Dragons, that the Braunstein sort of came back. And it came back in a way, I'm not talking about like the bros resurrecting it. I'm not talking about the Fellowship of the Thing guys and Griffith Morgan and all these guys bringing it back, or Dave Kahn or anything like that. The Braunstein came back like well before that. I would say I played in something that was Braunstein like over 10 years ago, right? Because it's so similar to like a live action LARP. That's not what I did, but what I'm talking about is a murder mystery. Today I was at Barnes & Noble, and I was walking around, and I went into the game section, and I saw a game called Salem 1692, and it says on the cover, a witch hunt of teamwork, deception, and betrayal. And so it's for 4 to 12 players. You can dive into the historic witch hunt of Salem, Massachusetts. Plays a lot shorter in this game than it would be in, say, like a normal Braunstein game. Braunsteins usually go on for hours. It's an all-day event, right? But what I found interesting is, like, we wouldn't call this a Braunstein necessarily, but it seems very similar, where there are roles passed out to players. All these roles have these characters that the players that are going to play the game, they take on. They have their own goals and motivations, and you know, sometimes those motivations clash, sometimes they align. People are going to be making deals. It talks about betrayal in this game, and this is true with like murder mysteries. You know, like I said, I played in a murder mystery years ago. It was a lot of fun. Except my wife and I were dating at the time, and it was at her place, and we had all her friends come over, and you know, I remember, you know, it was fun. Like, someone was, you know, there's the murder, and then you you talk to other players and you're trying to figure out who it is, and maybe you have a list of things that like your character knows, and you can choose to reveal those things to people, and you can cut deals, and it becomes this like social game throughout the night. And when my wife ran it for me and all of our friends and stuff at the time when we were dating, there was dinner and drinks and all that kind of stuff, which Dave Arneson actually mentions that refreshments will be provided. So, that's a thing too. But what's interesting is like the murder mystery, when I first heard the Braunstein described to me, it sounded like this Salem game, or it sounded like the murder mysteries, where the name Braunstein has been stripped from it. But because Braunstein is so ubiquitous and influential in Dungeons and Dragons, and by extension role-playing games as a whole, the whole concept is built on that people saw role-playing games and are like, I want something a little bit more rules light, kind of, right? Like, I want something a bit more social and less reliant on dice and things like that. Maybe something that's a little bit more about social manipulation, which the Braunstein is really big on. And so they kind of looked at role-playing games, and a lot of these murder mystery games and this Salem game, for example, a lot of these things sort of stripped out all of the dice rolling mechanics, character generation, mass combat stuff that I love and we love. I don't get me wrong, I think Braunsteins are cool, but I love all that other extra stuff that's kind of been bolted on to this concept of the Braunstein and created the hobby that we have. But they sort of stripped all that stuff away, not knowing that they're going back to the roots of what the hobby is. And so it's interesting to me to just think that kind of like normies brought Braunsteins back unintentionally with murder mysteries and games like this Salem game, where there's a very big focus on social manipulation and social deals, and there is a role-playing element. You're taking on when you're at a murder mystery, you even dress up in most cases. At least we dressed up for ours. It was like a 1920s thing. I was thinking at the time, like, it'd be so cool if this was a Call of Cthulhu one, but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to point out is one, again, I think that a lot of these guys that want to sort of lay claim in a legal sense, in an intellectual property sense, to the concept of the Braunstein have already lost the plot. They've already lost the game, because murder mysteries, the games like this Salem game, they've been out for a decade or more. These are extremely popular. Everyone knows about them. They don't call them Braunsteins, and maybe that's all that these guys care about. But they are still fundamentally at their core this concept of very reliant on a referee or a game master to adjudicate things, passing out characters that have secret goals and missions and things, and allowing those players that take on those characters to negotiate with each other, to talk to the referee, to make actions, to try and do things. There is in my opinion, you have to be foolish in order to not see the clear connection here. And I think it all comes back to normies looking at things like D&D or role-playing games and going, I like this, but if we strip out some of the stuff and just have it be the social part with very minimal rules, we can mass sell this to people, and they can do dinner parties, and they can do it's like a duh moment. I know people have already thought about this, but I just thought it was funny as I was sitting at Barnes & Noble looking at books, looking at these games on shelves, and some of them, again, these social manipulation, very Braunstein-like games all over the shelves, different settings, which is very like David Wesley, or at least that playgroup style, where they did, this one is 1692 Salem. The same company had one for 1940s Hollywood. And then you have other murder mystery brands where they're 1920s, Victorian era. There's tons of different settings out there that that sort of play into this. And that is also, in my opinion, very Braunstein-like as far as that tradition is concerned, where it's not just stuck in one era or one setting or one whatever. It can be a lot of different things. So to me, again, it's just super interesting to think that years ago, before all the hoopla that we see kind of in our segment of the hobby talking about Braunsteins were already resurrected ages ago. Years ago, a decade ago. with murder mysteries and these sort of social manipulation role-playing games that they're essentially social manipulation role-playing games that we see now. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I want to thank you guys for watching. Tell me what you think below. Have you played in any of these kinds of games? Do you run a Braunstein? Tell me about it below. Keep an eye out for Atomic Punk 2240. If by the time this video releases, it's not available for sale as print on demand, it will be soon. And if you like this kind of content and you want to support the channel, then feel free to support right here on YouTube or on my subscribe stall, or you can join the Gilded server and support monetarily there as well. It means a lot to me. It means I can devote more time to this and make more interesting, cool content for all you guys that are interested in these sorts of commentaries, discussions, and opinions about this hobby that we all know and love. So until the next video, guys, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.